Today, I'm going to show you how to make a cinematic dark pop song similar to artists such as Chris Gray, Platinum, and Shaker. My name is Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. Let's dive right in. To start the project, I want to be at a slower BPM so we can have something that feels nice and open, almost like a halftime groove. We're going to start with 98. If we need to adjust it, we can. And then other than that, I want to start with some kind of synth just to kind of get our chord progression down. Since we are doing that cinematic dark pop, I'll probably want something that fits more into a minor key. So if we go like F sharp minor, let's turn this down a little bit. All of those kind of fall in. Let's just get a little preset that we can start working with. I just want kind of a nice open pad. I don't need anything too wild right now. We'll go with something like this. I want something that has some texture. Let's go an octave lower. And let me get that LFO off. I don't really need that. There we go. I want those longer grains. That's nice. All right. Now let's do... We'll go back to the root. Back down here. But this is kind of where I want to change it. Typically, if we're in F sharp minor, that E right there, that's going to be your 7, but I kind of want to play around with the harmonic minor, which means that we're going to have a sharp 7, so instead of going to here, we'd go to here. We'd go straight to that F, so... And that really gives it that kind of like haunting horror movie score kind of vibe that I think is going to work really well, especially for artists like Chris Gray and Platinum. They do a lot of that harmonic minor. So I'm going to lay down some chords and then we'll go from there. I'll probably just do fifths. And we'll see what we get. So here's what we ended with. I did add kickstart so we can have a nice little bit of swell. And I also went ahead and added an EQ just so we can get rid of some of that top end. A lot of band passing is super critical to this kind of really dark cinematic sound. So you have plenty of rooms for like your top melodies and your drums and your vocals. So let's hear it now with those couple of little effects. And it's the chords that we played earlier. The only thing is I'm doing this little walk down right here. So as you can see, we are in the F sharp harmonic. It's pretty filtered. You'll hear it more later as we layer. But right now that feels really good. The next thing that I want to do is I want to add some kind of lead melody. So I'm going to add something where we can kind of just lay down no big chords, more so just something that moves a little bit. We'll go to this granular Glock. We'll do something like that. I'm gonna play around with some different notes, see what we like, but I'm using this preset. This is actually out of our new Poptopia 2 pack. It is 300 brand new presets for Serum 2. Today, September 26th, is actually the last day that you can get that on sale at its enter price. So we're gonna be using a lot of presets from Poptopia 2. You can get it for $50 now. At the end of today, September 26th, it does go up to $70, the same price as Poptopia 1. And then other than that, if you wanna check out any of our other sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, courses, we have a ton of free content over there as well. Head to our website, Make Pop Music. There will be a link in the description. But yeah, don't miss your chance to grab Poptopia 2 at its intro price. Let's lay down this little melody. So here's what we ended with. I'm essentially just walking this up and down the scale. And as you can see right here, that F, harmonic minor central. Like we're right in it. It's super creepy, super haunting when we layered it over the pads. But I want to spice this up. I'm going to add a plugin called Halftime. And what Halftime is doing is it's essentially creating a duplicate of this bell that is essentially slowing down by 50%. So it drops it an octave and it adds in some extra notes. I'm gonna blend it back down to like 20-25%. And then I also want to add a plugin called Thermal just to give us some extra saturation and movement. I want a lot of texture in this. That's why I use something like that granular glockenspiel rather than just something really simple and generic. I want a lot of texture, I want a lot of movement, and I want character. All right, here's Thermal. We're working with this Busted Waves preset. And we're just filtering it out a bit with a Pro Q. We're not doing anything too wild with that. I'm gonna shrink this down. This feels massive. I'm not sure why it's so big. Now, other than that, I wanna just lay down a couple extra little key layers that can kind of highlight some of these chords and build what I would call like a synth bed. I think that's really crucial for this. So I'm gonna layer up just different sounds to add texture and width. All right, the first key that I added is this preset called Your Ghost. The reason that I added this one is I wanted some high mid information and I wanted something that had a little bit of that warble. It's blended so low in the background, but it has a little bit of transient because we have that initial pad that is just so washy. And then I'm also adding this like broken B3 organ. Both of these are out of Poptopia 2, that pack I mentioned earlier, by the way. I like that movement. I like the wobble in that. And something that you're gonna hear in pretty much every Platinum track is just like all kinds of weird textural noises. So I'm gonna grab this little Atmos pad that essentially just has a bunch of like glitchy wind noises underneath it. It sounds like something that you would get in Omnisphere. We wanted patches that kind of like fit all of my favorite different synths. So we had stuff created like this. So you could really just use this like a nice ambient filler for your track. And then we also have this granular cello doing something similar to like that initial pad. Cinematic, kind of creepy, and we're just gonna play everything together now. If I stack all of that, we have a pretty full synth bed. We have most of our bases covered. Here's what the MIDI looks like. We're not having anything kind of clutter or overlap. And then the only other thing that I want to do is I'll add a Pro Q to my actual synth bus just so I can filter that out and kind of move the filter as the verse builds because I don't need a lot of this top end yet. So you can essentially do something like this. Then you can automate that up as the verse plays. But for now, we're going to leave it pretty minimal. Let's get a little bass bed down here. I want just like a nice big like Reese pad bass. Pretty much the go-to that you're going to hear in any of the artists that we're referencing today. I can grab this one, A Reese of My Heart. Yeah. I'm going to swap this to mono, and I'm going to give it some portamento, so if we want to do slides later, that'll be good. I'm just going to lay down essentially the root notes, so... One thing that I just went ahead and added was this extra bass. It's called Blades, and I'm doing this to kind of supplement that big rundown at the end that we talked about earlier that was kind of hard to hear on all the filtered synths. When we play everything together, let's put in some drums. I'm gonna go kick, snare, probably like an ambient snare and a hi-hat, and then we'll check back in. Here are our main drums. I have a kick and a snare, and then I have an extra snare. They're all out of our pack called The Works. They're out of the hip-hop folder. And the thing is, the kick and the snare, pretty simple. But I'm adding this washy snare. This is pretty crucial to this like cinematic dark pop sound. Here's what the washy snare sounds like with nothing on it. What I'm doing is I'm adding a vintage verb at 4 seconds at basically 50% wet with quite a bit of pre-delay, and then I have a filter that's just getting rid of a lot of that low end and high end, and I'm essentially just making my own little ambient snare. That happens in the background. Then we just have a little hi-hat loop. Not really doing anything too wild. I didn't want something super consistent. I wanted something that had a bit of movement. So now that that's all there, we have this second half of the track. I went ahead and did this. And what I'm going to do here is take moments to kind of pull things out. So I'm going to do big mutes. There's a section that I kind of want to add like an extra little synth. There's also a section that I think that we could add like some risers and effects. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. And to do that, what we can do is we can come down to this mute right here, and we can essentially mute this entire synth bus. Mute it right there. Mute it all over the place. So I'm gonna do that throughout the verse, and then I'm gonna add those last little couple things, and then the verse should be done. Okay, so I added in all of those mutes. I also added this big church bell. Felt super on brand. It's kind of cinematic, dark, gothic. And as you can see, we still have those stops. We're doing those little bass slides there like I talked about earlier. I'm doing those just by playing them in portamento. We also have moments over here where we do actually automate the pitch. And I'm just doing that by automating the pitch bend wheel. And inside of Serum, we're set to go down an entire octave and up an entire octave. So it just makes those really clean bass slides. But other than that, we did add a couple extra small layers in the meantime. We added this pad called Artificial Voices. We're also doing that kind of kickstart thing that we were doing on the Synced Grains pad, just to give us a bit of extra texture and width and depth. And then the other thing is we are adding in some strings. I do want to layer in string libraries on this. So for this, I'm going into Contact and I'm just using their strings ensemble and I'm just playing chords. And then to process, I'm doing a little bit of EQ. And then the main thing is on that pullout, I added this little cheesy, like Hotel Apache style synth. It's called Cheesy Sauce Tabs. I've got a lot of that vibrato in there. It kind of feels creepy. It feels like it would be in like a Ghostbusters or like an 80s horror movie. So I'm just kind of playing that to give me little moments. But if you hear the verse with all of the pullouts, the bell added, the artificial voices, and the strings, it has a totally different vibe than the first half of the verse. And then at the end, we just do that big rundown. Super weird, super dissonant. Love it. Other than that, let's go into a pre-chorus. I really just want to have like that little granular bell by itself. I might add it into the effects group just so I can mute the synths completely so there's not anything overlapping. So we'll do that. And then I'm probably just going to swap this up. What I'll do is I'll change the progression to fit more of that harmonic minor. So if we go into effects. So for this one, it's the same preset that we're starting with, but for the progression, we're simplifying it a lot. I actually took the inspiration basically from the halftime pattern that we had, and then I just tightened it up just to fit the new progression. Simplify it a little bit. I'm just processing that with a little bit of RC20. Adding some bit crusher, some distortion, and then we're doing a little bit of filtering. That's really all I want. I want everything to get really small. So we're gonna build up some verse or some chorus drums. For the bass, instead of going from that F sharp to the C sharp, I'm gonna go F sharp, down to that harmonic minor F, down to D. Let's see. Yeah, maybe we'll do that. So we'll go. All right, that feels good. So here are the drums that I laid down. It's the same kick and snare. All I'm doing is I'm adding this extra little hi-hat loop to give us a little bit more steady movement. I'm keeping the original. And then I added these big damage drums. This is something you'll hear in so many cinematic songs. It's just a really old library called Damage straight out of Contact. I think it's made by Heaviosity. And I just use it to play these big, like, war drums, essentially. And I'm layering that with my original drums. And then the last thing is I'm adding these big crash cymbals. So I have a crash on the one, but then I also have these crashes that I'm essentially automating the volume up so they kind of sidechain themselves to the kick. So that's it for now. We will automate like a tape stop in there just for what will be like a drop. And then it all comes back in. Other than that, we added some impacts just to, you know, bring it in. We have the Glock melody from that pre-chorus, and then we have the church bells that just follow the new chord progression. And then for the bass, we have that rumplement bass that we had earlier, and I'm layering that with another bass called Neurotypical. It's just this like really aggressive, like neuro style bass. And yeah, we're just playing the same exact chords. I'm just using that for top end texture. And we're doing some little walk-ups just to make things interesting. Now let's go to the synths because we need to add in basically everything to keep it as full as earlier. The first thing we have is the same pads that we had earlier, that synced grains, that ghost, that B3, the atmosphere. And then we have the artificial voices pad. But I'm also layering up this extra lead because I want kind of a buzzy saw that's going to do what that Glock is doing. That's just a preset called Beautiful and Bright. It's just out of the Poptopia 2-pack as well. Very nice, fits the vibe. And then we are layering up some choirs and some strings. Let me hide this automation because it's a little bit distracting. But for the choirs and the strings, we have these big sustained strings straight out of Contact using that same string ensemble library as earlier. And what we're doing there is we are essentially just allowing it to kind of walk down the scale. There is one thing that I do want to fix right here. I don't know why this got shifted over. We'll pop that back over there, and that feels better. And then other than that, we have staccato strings. These are from Action Strikes, I believe. Action Strings, yeah. And then we have some choirs that I pulled out of Omnisphere. We have the men's choir right here that is the Oohs and Ahs Swell. And then we have the women's choir that is the Oohs and Ahs Wheel. And I'm just playing both of those together. You layer that up with all of the extra impacts and everything. Now we have a pretty full chorus. Let me just fix this little tape stop right here. Let's hide that. I'm gonna throw on some vocals. For the vocals, we'll probably go pretty minimal for the verses. We'll stack up the choruses a little bit. And then thematic wise, I'm just gonna write essentially like a dark, sexy love song. And we'll call that a day. To start the song, I wanted to have an intro where I essentially just have that glockenspiel and a couple of the pads. And then I'm doing this really ambient vocal. Here's what it sounds like straight out. I'm tuning it and shifting that format down in Auto-Tune, and then I'm just doing my normal processing, EQ, compression, and then I'm adding spaced out that gives me a lot of this texture. So I have it basically right in the middle. So we're doing a big delay, we're doing a big reverb, and I have the ducking on about 15%. We're also filtering it a little bit with this Pro Q right here, because I don't need any of that top end. And then we'll add the synths, which I'll tell you a little bit more in a second. But in the mix, super ambient. Feels nice, feels spacey. For the actual lead vocal, let's just go over everything. Here is what it sounds like straight out.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe. Now I'm falling to my knees.
Vocal chain is a Sony C800G, a Rupert Neve Designs Newton channel strip with a little bit of EQ happening, an 1176 from AudioScape with like 4 dB of gain reduction, and an Opto compressor from AudioScape doing about 3 to 4 dB of gain reduction. So that's our raw vocal. I'm going to do a little bit of EQ, nothing too wild actually, just kind of thinning this up a little bit in the mix, and then de-essing it, adding some more compression with like RVox, just giving me a little bit more push. And then the main thing is I have this Pro MB. I like doing this when I'm lowering my register because I want to kind of enhance some of my high mids, but I'll have them to where if I'm doing something that gets, you know, loud or nasally, it can clamp down, and it's really going to help control these low mids.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe. Now I'm falling to my knees. Worship you religiously.
And I know what you're thinking, it sounds so thin and so bright right now, but in the mix, once I pop on all these wet effects, if I have a lot of that low end in there, it gets really muddy.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe. Now I'm falling to my knees. Worship you religiously. Lock the door and hide the key. Baby, I can't guarantee.
So we're gonna ease up on this just a hair.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe.
Let's go to the fun part of this vocal processing, which I think actually is like the synths and the reverbs on this one. So for the main plate, we're going much longer than normal. I'm going with a 5-second plate, and I'm cutting out so much of the mid control. I just want it to be really bright and shiny. I want it to almost act as like a pad in the background. So I'm doing that. I'm doing my kind of signature parallel widening, just have a Roland Dimension D on setting 3.
Something's got a hold of me.
Adds width and modulation. And then for the quarter note delay, it's just a big quarter note out of Echo Boy on the tube tape setting. But I have this like 5.5-second reverb on that. Because without it, the dry delay sounds really awkward. That kind of tucks everything together where you get this really washy ambient vocal, but the dry kind of lead vocal still cuts through. You're just left with all of this ambient space in the background.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe. Now I'm falling to my knees. Worship you religiously. Lock the door and hide the key. Baby, I can't guarantee I'ma make you wanna.
So that's what we're doing for the vocal and the verse. We're going to also pull in this little low vocal layer. I'm just duplicating the main vocal, pitching it down an octave inside of Auto-Tune, and then I am adding the waves doubler right here. And then when we layer that in,
think we've gone too far, now we can't turn back. Hands gripped hard, right around my neck. If I show my cards, then would I push you away? Fingers slide running down my chest, and I touch your thigh and you lose your breath, and we go all night.
Like that moment right there is a good moment where this is a big reason that I do this big return right here. With all of my wet effects is because sometimes I want to mute those or I want to automate those, and it's really easy to just do that to the whole group. Go right there.
And we go all night until the morning sun breaks.
All right, So there we go. Let's go into this little drop chorus vocal. It's one vocal right up the middle, and it's everything as normal.
Oh baby, don't you run and hide, there's no...
But I'm doing quite a bit of decapitator. Here are the settings if you want to copy, just adding a bit of saturation, and then I am filtering it out quite a bit, getting rid of a lot of that like sharp high mid, and then I'm adding outer space to basically give me like a tape echo.
Oh baby, don't you run and hide, there's no way we can escape. It's not a place to...
And I wanted to filter it out, go down to one kind of more mono vocal, just because I feel like it's a nice push and pull with the verse, and then we're going to have a really big chorus coming up.
Till the morning sun breaks. Don't you run and hide, there's no way we can escape. It's not a place to decide, we're in shackles held by fate. Baby, if I had to die, throw us deep in...
All right, let's get into the big vocal stacks right here. We have our lead vocal straight up the middle.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep.
We have a left and a right dub. Saying the same thing 2 more times, pan 1 100% left, pan 1 to 100% right, and I am about 70 dB lower than the lead.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into the lake. Cause there's no way to deny I'm only yours until I'm 6 feet in the grave, grave, grave.
Super washy, super ambient, and then I have these harmonies right here that I'm essentially just like pedaling on nodes.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into the lake. Cause there's no way to deny I'm only yours until I'm 6 feet in the grave, grave, grave.
And then the last thing is this smash vocal right here, which is just the lead vocal with double lock thrown on at 100%, and then a doubler. I'm almost using it like a parallel compression chain, and so when you hear them all,
baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into the lake. Cause there's no way to deny I'm only yours until I'm 6 feet in the grave, grave, grave.
When we go into that big post-chorus run, I'm just layering it with this high vocal that is essentially pitched up an octave. I added a ton of decapitator to saturate it. I added a ton of vintage verb to really pop it back in the mix and have it super ambient. And then I'm adding kickstart to do a quarter note swell. And I'm adding some EQ just to take away some of that like low end saturation that it's adding that I don't really need. So it sounds like this. Super tucked in the background. One thing that I want to talk about real quick is that we are in harmonic minor for the actual chords of the song. However, if you're paying attention, you'll hear that right here, this first little vocal riff is in just normal F sharp minor.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into...
That, if we want it to be in harmonic, should go up here. That should be something that feels a little bit more like this.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep.
I didn't really want that. I wanted it to kind of sit in that normal minor because then to me it feels much more eerie when the next note is harmonic instead of being that, instead of being that E, if we go to that F next, after you literally just heard that E in there, it feels really eerie. And we don't have a clash because when we're doing the harmonic, swap to F, there's no clashing notes right here. We're not messing around over there. There we're kind of pedaling on that C sharp and that B. So it sounds like this.
Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into the lake. Cause there's no way to deny.
So we kind of modulate between standard minor and harmonic minor, which I think adds to the eeriness of it. But other than that, that's kind of everything that we're going to add for this specific track. What I'll do now is I will play it all the way through so you can hear it. But once again, if you want to check out a lot of the presets that you heard in this, a lot of them are from our pack Poptopia 2. There is an intro sale for $50. It ends today. A lot of the drum sounds and ear candy was either from The Works or Sweet Tooth. Neither of those are technically on sale right now, but you can always grab them at makepopmusic.com. Checking us out over there is the best way to support us, and then subscribing to make sure that you check out these videos every single Friday when we drop them at 10 a.m. Really helps us out a ton. Let us know in the comments what video you want to see in the future, but I'm going to play this so you guys can hear it.
Something's got a hold of me. I can barely breathe. Now I'm falling to my knees. Worship you religiously. Lock the door and hide the key. Baby, I can't guarantee I'ma make you wanna scream. I don't do this cheerily. Think we've gone too far, now we can't turn back. Hands gripped hard right around my neck. If I show my cards, then would I push you away? When your fingers slide running down my chest, and I touch your thigh and you lose your breath, and we go all night until the morning sun breaks. Don't you run and hide, there's no way we can escape. It's not our place to decide. We're in shackles held by fate. Baby, if our hands are tied, throw us deep into the lake. 'Cause there's no way to deny I'm only yours until I'm 6 feet in love.
And that's going to do it for this video. I'll see you guys next Friday at 10 a.m. as always. But until then, much love. Peace.